Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Vancouver Real. My name is Mike Zaremba, and that's at Mike Zaremba on Instagram and at Floating Yogi on Twitter. And with me is my big brother Andy.
Hello everybody, great to be back, and I'm very excited for today. That's Andy Zaremba on Instagram and Twitter.
And we are usually broadcasting or podcasting out of our street level studio in downtown Vancouver, BC at Floathouse. Floathouse.ca is our website, so check that out if you get the chance to learn more about flotation therapy and sensory deprivation tanks. But today we're actually we're out on the island, and we've ventured all the way, many ferries, a long trek out to a secluded spot to visit with one of our guests who's been on our hit list for a while now. And
this is a big one for us today.
Yeah,
and it's funny how it kind of came together. We kind of met each other at Bill a few months ago, and you said yes to the podcast. I was like, sweet. And it took us a while to get it all set up, but now we're here and it's happening. So,
and yeah, today we have with us is Dave Asprey. He's the founder and CEO of Bulletproof. It's the state of high performance, and that's bulletproofexec.com, all one word. And a little bio here. Dave is the founder of Bulletproof and the author of a New York Times bestseller, The Bulletproof Diet. Is a Silicon Valley investor and technology entrepreneur who spent 2 decades and over $300,000 to hack his own biology. And Dave's lost over 100 pounds without counting calories or excessive exercise, and used only techniques to upgrade his brain by more than 20 IQ points and lowered his biological age while learning to sleep more efficiently in less time. So basically all things biohacking, and we're going to get into what that means more. Dave is also the creator of a widely popular Bulletproof Coffee, and if you haven't heard of Bulletproof Coffee yet, then you probably don't have an internet connection, and because it's everywhere. And host of the #1 health podcast, Bulletproof Radio, so definitely check that out, folks. Since you're already kind of familiar with this form of media, go check out the Bulletproof Radio podcast. And lastly, but not least, you wrote the book, The Bulletproof Diet. So long-winded, but Dave Asprey, welcome to Vancouver Real.
Oh, thanks. I'm excited to be on the show. And I'm excited you guys came to the Bulletproof Labs instead of me having to drive over there.
Yeah, this is very cool. And I really liked your front door. I'm not going to say what was on it, but we have a picture of the top part, and it has Bulletproof Labs. Very, very cool.
The bottom part basically says that stuff in here might sort of possibly kill you.
Or will definitely. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it says definitely. But either way, it's like, it's just being honest and forthright. And, I think in a world where there's a lot of fluff and crap, it's nice to have some
very true
concrete, warnings there for you, just, at your own risk, right? But here we are.
So Dave, I guess first question I would have for you is, if you were going to explain to somebody who's never heard of it before, how would you describe biohacking?
Biohacking is the art and the science of changing the environment around you and the environment inside you so that you have control of your biology. If you want to make your body do what you want it to do, sitting there and wanting it to do something and pushing and trying is actually the worst way to achieve that goal. Your body doesn't listen to you very well. It listens to your environment. It's designed to interface with the environment around you. So you can consciously make tweaks to the environment that make your body do different things. And one of the reasons that I like what you guys are working on is floating is one of those things. So the body's right now, I'm filtering out sounds of a bird chirping outside. There's probably a bald eagle squawking above us as we speak. But there's other sounds, and when you're in a float tank, you just cut a lot of that stuff out in a way that you never experience as a human being. So that's changing the environment around you to change what your biology does.
Totally.
Right? And that's just one example. But biohacking is giving you control of your body, but wanting control or just somehow assuming you're going to have control, it doesn't work like that. You can train the body to do things. You can train yourself to have more control of your biology, but it doesn't listen to you. It listens to the world.
One thing I want to tap on that you said right in the beginning was that it's both an art and a science. Can you maybe kind of dive into that a little more, elaborate why you coined both an art and a science behind that?
There's a lot of science behind what works and what doesn't work, more now than there ever has been in all of history. When you think about just the huge citizen science movement, big data, people sharing online what works so that they can try it and then see if it works even more. And so we know that. But also, the very best healers sometimes just no. You ever go to an acupuncturist, and a good acupuncturist knows where to put the needle, and they know when they're not in, and they might know. And there might be a scientist out there who like uses a voltmeter and says, well, there's a tiny change in microvoltage in this spot. But somehow the talented acupuncturist knows exactly where to put the needle to get the biological effect that you can measure, or maybe you could just feel it. And art is the realm of feeling, and science is the realm of thinking. And if you try to manage the human biology while ignoring feeling, you're a doofus. Because your thoughts are really slow compared to your reaction time. And your reaction time and other invisible things like hormonal changes, they're invisible. Right? You can use technology to become aware of them, but to gain control of them, it oftentimes requires changing what's going on outside or changing some inner programming. But that's why science alone won't do this. The art and the feeling and the emotions are valid. They are real. And the fact that you don't feel what I feel necessarily, I mean, you hit us both with the hammer, we're both going to say, ow. But we could both interpret this room very differently from a biological perspective, from a threat analysis perspective. And it's unconscious for both of us. It's just different, but it's still real. And that's when we get into the realm of feelings, of art, of perception. And they're important. And you can use science to study feelings, but feelings are more art than science.
Totally.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, and something about science, do you think there's room for science to get into that side? Like, do you think science, because, if I think about what science does and what they say they do, what a scientific philosophy is, they should look at all phenomena. And sometimes, these subjective feeling notions, how do you study that? Do you think there's room though do you think there's bias preventing science going into really studying subjectivity and feelings?
Well, there's that little realm of psychology and psychiatry. However, if you talk to any real doctor or real scientist, those are a bunch of fluff heads or whatever you want to call them. Those are the loony people.
Woo-woo.
The woo factor. And there's actually a bunch of hardened skeptic trolls online who are oh, they're full of woo.
Oh, I know some of them.
Yeah, and it actually kind of makes me laugh because here's the troll logic, and the troll logic goes like this: that can't happen, therefore it didn't. Which is as anti-science as possible.
Right.
And what they've done is they've said, I've bought in on this dogma, and science is always hypothetical. Oh, I think it works this way, but I'm looking for that one corner case where it doesn't work that way. Because then I can say, this isn't an absolute rule. This is a theory. It's a working model. And almost everything we think we know is a working model. Yeah. So this hardcore skeptics are willing to ignore evidence as being that of a con artist or a fraud or a quack or whatever personal ad hominem attack they choose. They're willing to do that.
Yes.
And they're willing to do it. Why? Because of ego. And so I actually have learned to appreciate trolls because there's this great equation. And it's actually a time and energy balance equation. And it goes something like this. They spend all their time watching whatever content it is, and then the content owner can look at the troll comment and then in less than 1 second click ban, delete.
Oh, yeah.
And then the troll consumed all the content, probably even benefited from the content, got all upset and angry, but the net energy balance was they spent an hour and then wrote a bunch of angry stuff that affected nobody, right? So
it's true. Yeah,
and that's what they're really spending their time doing. They're wasting their time doing that stuff where the content generator is doing things to generate that content. So,
but if you go deeper into the psychology of that sort of stuff, now we're in the realm of feelings. If you want to scientifically evaluate trolls, and actually this has been done, there's a study, I think HuffPo covered it, talking about the odds of someone being a sociopath or a psychopath and a troll, and there's a very high correlation. And there's another study that shows that people who have a skeptical view of the world are 3 times more likely to have senile cognitive dementia than normal people. So here's the deal. Is the glass half empty or half full? I actually don't have a vote. The glass is, and there's some stuff in there, and there's some not stuff in there, and we could probably measure it, and we might even perceive it differently, and it's all valid. Neither of us is evil for thinking it's half full or half empty. It means that there's now a topic for inquiry and that we can be actual scientists about it. So anytime a scientist says, that is impossible, therefore it didn't happen, at that point they've stopped being a scientist and they've started being someone who essentially is following a religious dogma, and that's not cool.
Yeah, definitely. So going back a little bit now, how long have you been working on biohacking, and how did Bulletproof come to be?
In the mid to late 90s,
Yeah.
I'd already lost some weight. I really decided circa 1994, 95. I'm like, look, I weigh 300 pounds, finishing out my first 4 years of university. I exercised.
How did you get there?
Well, it turns out I was really trying to lose weight. This is kind of shocking, but fat people we know are fat. And so we do things to try and not be fat. So you eat less and you exercise more like you're told to do, even though that's a recipe for making you weak and tired and emotional all the time. So what did I do? I got really serious after I had 2 knee surgeries before I was 23. Mm-hmm. And I said, all right, 6 hours or 6 times a week, an hour and a half a day, I'm going to work out. Half weights, half cardio. That ought to do it. And I'll cut my calories around 1,800 and then I'm going to lose weight. And what I did was I got really tired and I just kept at it. I did this for about a year and a half. And I got really strong. I could max out most of the machines at the local health club. I could pick up and bench press any of my thin friends who ate more than I did and exercised less than I did. And just one day, I thought, it's just because I'm not trying hard enough. And one day I just looked at it. I'm like, wait a minute. It's not me. It's that this doesn't work. And I tried changing what I ate. Not the amount that I ate, but just the makeup of what I ate. And magically, I lost 50 pounds in 3 months.
Wow.
The other 50 pounds was a lot harder to lose than it is for most people. And I went and I started studying, okay, what's going to work, what's not going to work. And then I started getting really profound brain fog. I'm in Silicon Valley. I'm at the company that one of the pioneers in the networking business, and then I joined the company that created modern cloud computing. Like Google's first servers were in our buildings running on our network.
Oh, wow.
Like the foundation of e-commerce kind of stuff.
Crazy. Cool. Yeah.
The coolest time ever.
Oh, yeah. The experience you got out of that must have been insane.
It was. And the company I was at grew from 300 people to 5,000 people. I was there. Wow, and I ended up running like the technology roadmap for strategy. And I was like, and I'm still kind of like a kid almost. Like I'm 26 and attending board meetings at a publicly traded company. I wasn't on the board. I just got to sit in the back and be quiet. But hey, it was like,
oh, it's huge.
What an experience though.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was rocking amazing. And I'm grateful for that experience. But at the same time, I bought disability insurance because I couldn't remember what happened half the time. I was really just profoundly exhausted. I remember this one meeting where I'm like, my back hurts. And it's because I couldn't keep my eyes open about like how much coffee I had. So I stood up in the back of the meeting and I fell asleep standing up and I fell over because I was just so exhausted.
Wow.
And I couldn't figure out what it was. And it turns out it was actually in the environment around me. I was living in a house that had toxic mold that was affecting me kind of profoundly. But no one tells you this stuff. And I just launched a documentary about that because it's such a big factor for so many people who just don't know why they're fat and tired all the time.
What was your documentary?
It's called Moldy, and you go to moldymovie.com. And it came out about 2 weeks ago, and about 60,000 people have seen it so far. And
wow,
it's
awesome.
It was a relatively large budget, well-produced documentary meant to just highlight this kind of kryptonite that's in some buildings, not in others, that permanently affects some people. Other people, they just get cancer and die eventually, but they don't feel it.
Yeah.
So 28% of people are canaries, and they're in environments like that, and then they're mean to people around them. They get tired, they get fat, their joints hurt, they get autoimmunity. So this had happened to me. I have pictures of my brain. As part of hacking myself, I injected radioactive sugar and then did something called a SPECT scan with Daniel Amen, who's a really famous psychologist. In fact, I think he was just called America's most popular psychologist. Cool. He's in Moldy, the documentary.
Nice.
So 12 years ago, I got a picture of the metabolic activity in my brain. Now, I'm getting my MBA at Wharton, and I'm working full-time at a startup that sold for about $600 million in value in stock exchanges and stuff. So successful in my career, top MBA program in the country, or at least top 3. I don't know. You guys can, whoever's listening, go Wharton. Anyway.
Go trolls.
So whatever that was, but I was barely putting one foot in front of the other. So I had this brain scan done, and they showed, Dave, when you try and concentrate, you have zero metabolic activity in your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that makes you human.
Yeah.
And no wonder I was kind of struggling at school and at work.
No kidding.
And literally 6 weeks from when we were recording this interview, I saw Dr. Amen again, and he did a fresh scan of my brain. He hadn't personally seen my old brain scans, so I showed them to him, and he goes, Dave, good God. So what do you mean? He said, your brain scan from 12 years ago looks like that of a hardcore street drug addict. Like,
What?
yeah, he's like, this is what the mold toxins that were in your bedroom were doing to your brain. And we can see what happened. So what got me into biohacking was that an invisible force that I did not know was making me feel like crap half the time, and I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was. And at first I thought it was because I was weak. I thought it was because I wasn't trying hard enough. I thought it was a lack of willpower or some sort of personal failing. And it was not. It was an environmental problem around me. And I've since spent actually a lot more than $300,000 now, because you're sitting in a laboratory. I just put
I see that. Yeah. Awesome place.
But at least $300,000, and now about 20 years hacking my body, figuring out what are all of the things I can do in the environment to make myself perform better. What are all the things I can do inside myself? What are the trainings I can do? And I've spent 2 months of my life with electrodes glued to my head, basically running a lie detector to figure out whether I'm lying to myself about the environmental inputs I get.
Wow.
It's a way of replicating Zen meditation, but the program's called 40 Years of Zen, because in 7 days you can teach your brain to have the same brainwaves as someone who spent 40 years of daily Zen practice. So when you do that, like kind of 8 lifetimes worth of that, you get more awareness. And Bulletproof started about 4 years ago. And my goal there was, look, I was already a VP at a big internet security company. I already have a good career.
Yeah.
I don't have to do Bulletproof.
Yeah.
And I said, if someone had told me what I know now, and by the way, what I know now also includes 10 years of running an anti-aging research group called the Silicon Valley Health Institute, svhi.com. You can see 10 years worth of video for free online, 10 years of top experts presenting on this stuff, people who taught me.
That's amazing.
And that's some of the social, like, nonprofit work I do. I've been chairman or president or a board member for many years in that group. So that all kind of came together, and I said, all right, knowing what I know now, if I could go back in times when I was 20 or 16 or 25, it doesn't really matter, and I could totally just tell myself the few things that I didn't know, it would have saved me years of struggle and pain and tiredness. And also, I'll just be really straightforward. If you're toxic, whether or not it's from mold or from, car exhaust, bad paint, because you have the wrong bacteria in your gut, because you're eating the wrong stuff, because of MSG, like, there's countless things, and all of these are written on the Bulletproof blog, but things that make you weak. If you're doing that and you don't know it, you probably don't know what it feels like to be at full power. But if this is going on, the first place it's going to show is in emotional irregularity. So you can't help but yell at your kids or be mean to your spouse or snap at your boss when your boss asks you to do something that he's paying you to do, for God's sake, or whatever it is. But those things that you regret later, that happens, and it happens because your biology is not where you want it to be. Your fight or flight response got triggered by something. So there's stuff you can do. And I worked on that, and I said, all right, if I could tell myself this, go back in time, it would have changed my life so profoundly. So I'm going to blog about it, and if I can change 5 people who are on my trajectory and just get them on a path where, oh my God, I'm in charge of all these things, it would have been the biggest act of public service I could ever do. So that was my big win. And I started making the coffee beans that are free of mold toxins, the ones that don't cause the jitter and crash, because I kept throwing away like hundreds of dollars worth of coffee, because I'd buy the best coffee hoping I could drink it and feel normal. And then that batch wasn't good. So I started doing lab testing, and I said, maybe I can get people to help me pay for this lab testing. So I'll see, maybe there's 100 people who want ultra clean coffee, and the response was amazing. And the recipe of putting brain octane oil and grass-fed butter in there, it came from Tibetan yak butter tea, and then hundreds of iterations. And now it's become very well known because you can feel the effect very immediately.
Definitely. Yeah. I actually had the experience of, I was in Nepal and I was having their milk tea. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they put butter in that one though,
It
but
depends what part of Nepal.
yeah, I was doing the, just the base camp trek. And we were having this milk tea every day, and I loved it. I drank 2 or 3 cups of these every day, and it was fantastic. And lately, I started adding the grass-fed butter into my coffee every morning, and Mct oil. And I got to say, like, it definitely curbs my hunger at the very least. I know that's happening, and you do feel really good. Like, you feel great, and I'm not sure what that is. It's energy levels. It's maybe cognitive abilities that have improved, or something like that. But overall, it feels amazing.
In the Bulletproof Diet book, I wrote about like 6 reasons Bulletproof Coffee works. And there's like a couple big variables. One is it's not Bulletproof Coffee if you make it with coffee that has mold in it, because when there's mold toxin in coffee, you feel a jitter, or you also can feel a food craving later because your body needs more glucose. You get unstable blood sugar, you get an adrenal response that comes from eating toxins, and you also get dehydration that comes when your body's like, get these things out through the kidneys and the bladder, so you can basically have less blood plasma available.
Yeah.
So that's part of the recipe. And then there's like a big kind of, I would call it a scam happening right now in MCT oil. And I popularized this obscure thing. And MCT oil stands for medium chain triglycerides. These come from coconut oil. The problem is that a chemist named these as medium chain triglycerides. And there's 4 kinds of them. And it was not a biochemist, but a normal like chemical industry chemist. So it's an arbitrary name that doesn't have any actual meaning. And when you look at the true biological medium chain triglyceride oils, there's really only 2 of them. And they have different effects on the body. So there's companies out there claiming, oh, just put coconut oil and it's the same. It's 60% MCT. It's actually not true. The most abundant fatty acids in coconut oil, like lauric acid, they're dirt cheap, but they don't turn on the brain in the same way they go through the liver. So there's all these tweaks that make biohacking work. You can be directionally accurate. I'm like, look, butter is always better than milk and coffee because milk and cream stick to the antioxidants in coffee, so they're not bioavailable, like 340% less available. But if you want to make bulletproof coffee, use lab-tested, upgraded coffee beans, and instead of using these medium-chain triglyceride oils, some of which they're not biologically true MCTs, use brain octane, which is the one that works best.
Excellent. Well, one thing when I started listening to your podcast with Max Lugavere,
Yeah.
how do you pronounce that? Lugavere, and I'm almost through the entire thing, and the first thing, I'm fairly new to the world of biohacking myself, and I felt it really overwhelming. And I'm like, how does one even start fixing all these potential problems? How do you find out where to begin, where you're at, what you're consuming that's possibly bad for you, your environment? How would you recommend somebody get started?
A good place to start is check out a copy of the Bulletproof Diet. It's not an expensive book, and it gives you a framework. I've spent a long time studying this. I've talked to hundreds of world experts. I've read hundreds and hundreds of books and thousands of papers, and I formulate stuff that makes humans perform better, and I'm a guinea pig, okay?
Yeah.
No one is like me. And you shouldn't have to be like me to benefit from this.
Yeah.
So the big public service that I'm providing is making frameworks for understanding without having to have all the knowledge. So the Bulletproof Diet book is based on a 1-page roadmap, and you can download this for free. You can go to bulletproofexec.com and look for the roadmap, or you can text 58885, text BP Diet and your email address, and I'll just mail it to you for free. This is the backbone, the skeleton of the book, and I give it away because it's the thing you need to know. You print it out, you put it on your fridge, and it tells you, look, if you're going to eat protein, these are the proteins that are better, less inflammatory. These are the ones you don't want to eat. And it has a category of foods that are bulletproof, that make people have more energy and feel good without a lot of downside. There's a list of suspect foods. And suspect foods are things that cause problems for huge numbers of people, and they don't know it. So for instance, 20% of arthritis is caused by bell peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplant. They're all in the nightshade family. Yeah. So if you don't know this and you eat one of those every day like most people, and you're in pain all the time and a little bit tired, that's just your natural state. You don't know that it's food. So in the book, I'm like, look, just eliminate all the suspects and just do it for 2 weeks and just be like, how do I feel now? And most people, like, I feel like my pants are too big. I feel like my brain's completely turned on, and it's different. And then you can add the suspects back in and realize, wait, some of those really are guilty, but maybe you do fine on lentils. I don't recommend them as a very good food source, but they're better than starving. And if you love lentils and you don't react to them, then have lentils. But more people are made weak by lentils than are made strong.
Right.
So a big starting point then is to eliminate a lot of things from your diet. I mean, I guess diet's a great place to start, probably, right?
You have the most control of your diet, and there's other simple things you can do, and one of them is look at your sleep quality. So if you have diet problems, you have energy fluctuations throughout the day. You get hypoglycemia, you get tired, you get cranky, you get hangry and hypoglycemic, and
nice.
Those are problems. But if you just look at sleep, when you control your light exposure at night, you sleep way better. And this was unknown 10 years ago. And I started running some free software called Flux. And in fact, on my phone, do you have something on your phone?
I don't have it on my phone, but I just heard about it on your podcast.
Nice.
The light filter.
Right. So you can't really see it on my phone, but my phone has a screen protector on it, and it's called ZenTech. And the ZenTech screen protector blocks the narrow spectrum of blue light that most suppresses melatonin. So you need melatonin to sleep.
Yep.
If you look at a bright light, like staring at your phone right before bed or turning on the bright lights to brush your teeth right before bed, for 4 hours, the meat in your body, the stuff you don't control, it will stop making melatonin because it thinks it's daytime. And it's trying to make your body match the natural light-dark cycle that doesn't exist anymore. So what you do is you turn off the lights or dim the lights in your house, or you use amber lights, and I carry a couple of those on the website. I'm not a light sales guy. That's not what I do, but I have some on the Bulletproof site. And you get the screen protector, the ZenTech thing, and now you still shouldn't stare at a phone that's turned up all the way. So you go onto your phone and you do this thing. I don't know if this will even show on the webcam, but you swipe up on the iPhone and you dim the phone as much as you can, like that.
Yeah. Cool.
And you dim the phone and have the screen protector. And now if you check Facebook before bed, it's still a bad idea because you'll probably be thinking about how many likes you got instead of dreaming about something better. But at least you got your melatonin. Yeah. So it's a simple hack. Yeah. One change in the color spectrum of light that you put into your body, and it will measurably change your sleep improvement if you're measuring your sleep improvement. And if it doesn't, then you tried a hack that didn't work. Yeah. But for the vast majority of people, reducing light exposure, blacking out your room, cooling off your room, these are cheap. They're simple.
Yeah.
You can get all sorts of sensors and monitors and do all sorts of other things. The other big hack is try doing exercise in a different way. We've all been trained that if you're a good person, you like go for a long, slow jog like every day, probably.
I like how you turned it jog and not run.
Yeah.
And always people are like, I'm going for a run. You're like, no, you're jogging.
Yeah.
This is my personal belief. But you know what I mean, though?
It's totally true. Like, okay, so yeah, you're kind of
not
jogging.
A sprinter, you're jogging.
Yeah, you're trotting.
Yeah, exactly.
The trot.
And like, I have great respect for people who run a marathon.
Totally.
Because it's pushing your personal limits. It's training yourself to go beyond. But if you run a marathon every week or every month, dude, you know what happened to the guy who ran the first marathon?
He died.
That's why we celebrate his sacrifice. So if you're 45 and you're 40 pounds overweight and you're going to run a marathon, no, you're just going to need 2 knee surgeries later in life. Like, that's not something you do for health. It's something you do when you're healthy to see how like, to throw yourself against a crucible. That's badass.
Right.
Yeah.
Doing it to get healthy is like, I'm going to, drink myself into sobriety. I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's true. We're gonna have to wrap this up relatively soon, but I wanted to kind of shift gears a bit because as entrepreneurs as well, we're really curious to hear how the new coffee shop's going, and the one down in Santa Monica.
Santa Monica.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that opened up maybe a couple months ago now.
Well, we had our opening party a couple months ago.
Okay.
We are still waiting on our final permit.
It's
been, as an entrepreneur, I can say painful, red tape beyond belief.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's happening,
cool.
we think, in a couple weeks here. But cool. I would, I'll do a big announcement on Facebook. But at this point, the Bulletproof team, who's been in place for 3 full months, has been going around in Santa Monica and just all over LA and doing demos of Bulletproof Coffee.
Cool.
And like every CrossFit box we can find, and yoga studios, and just like showing people, hey, this is how different you can feel from 1 cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's not just coffee, it's something different.
Well, and one thing I'll say quickly about the coffee too is like we were able to try it at the Superhuman Summit. That's where we ran in with your team in Vancouver, and they were giving out lots of samples. And actually that table we were right next to them was great because you guys just had an endless line of people going to it. So we were just able to feed off the people that were waiting. But I got to try it, and it's cool. You don't have to add any sugar. It doesn't need anything to sweeten it at all. You just have the coffee and the oil and then the butter, and it's delicious. But okay, well, that's frustrating then, the permit issue.
And it's one of those things where we probably walked into like a perfect storm on that. Mm-hmm. But we have an amazing location. It's a former Starbucks we took over. Cool. It's underneath Arnold Schwarzenegger's office.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. It's very cool. 2 blocks from Google's headquarters, 2 blocks from Gold's Gym. Like it's a pretty sweet location. Cool. And the whole environment is optimized for human performance. So it's not just a coffee shop. It's got a full menu. And everything we do, the color of the light, the temperature, the electrical system, it's all optimized for making people feel amazing when they're there.
And we're going to bounce.
One quick question I have for you. What is it that drives you? What wakes you up in the morning and makes you want to do Bulletproof? What's the motivating factor behind that?
What motivates me is helping other people. And at the last Bulletproof conference, I had Stephen Kotler, who wrote The Rise of Superman and one of the founders of the Flow Genome Project, a project which I'm backing, where they're using hardcore science to unlock what makes people go into flow state. And one of the documented, scientifically validated triggers for being in a flow state is service to others. So what gets me up in the morning is that I look back at all the shit that I had to deal with when I weighed 300 pounds, when I had arthritis at age 14, when my brain wouldn't work and I desperately wanted it to do something I was passionate about, and I didn't have the energy just to bring it when I wanted to. I look back at that and I'm like, how many people are not going to have that happen because of the work I'm doing? And that gets me up in the morning, because I get those emails every day from people say, Dave, we never met. You changed my life. I got a giant raise because my performance at work doubled because I'm not tired all the time. Or I just lost 50 or 100 pounds and I did it without being hungry and without effort. And it didn't come roaring back the way it always has before. Like, that's big stuff. Like, you're changing lives.
That is huge.
How could I not wake up and be stoked about that? That's what gets me going for Bulletproof. And the other reason I wake up is I get to play with my kids. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a bonus. And we do experience a little bit of that with our job at Float House as well. And we get all sorts of people commenting on how we are impacting their lives in a positive way. One last thing, if you could touch on it, why do you float? You have a float tank in your home.
Yep.
And why do you do it?
Floating is documented to actually lower your amygdala response. And the amygdala is like the seat of your fight or flight response, this kind of hypervigilance. And a lot of the behaviors that people are usually ashamed of, like, why did I write that on Facebook about that guy? I must be a total jerk when you're feeling good. And then later, like, nah, I don't feel good, right? That's your amygdala right there. So if you can reset that, and oftentimes it's set by trauma. It can be very early in life trauma. It can be, someone beat you up in 7th grade and it's stuck, right? And suddenly, without your knowledge or consent, your body views the world as a more hostile place than it is. When you float, it provides the opportunity to reset that so that you can be in a calmer place. I'm also profoundly lazy in that
float tank's a great place for you.
Yeah, and like I've done breathing meditation every morning for 5 years. I've meditated, advanced yoga. But if I'm going to meditate, which takes time away from my family or away from service to others, then I want it to count. And if you're going to meditate somewhere, remove all of the environmental obstacles to good meditation so you can go deeper faster. And that's a heck of a good reason to float.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to go about it for sure.
Totally.
So we are at 4:24. So
we got to wrap it up. Unfortunately, it's a quick one, but I think we did it justice. We got as much in there as we could. And on behalf of both of us and everyone at Vancouver Real, we're really honored to be in your lab here and pumped to have this chance to talk to you. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for making the trip. It was a pleasure to be on your show. And next time I'm in Vancouver, I look forward to coming by and floating.
Awesome. That'd be amazing. Anything else you'd like to throw out there?
I mentioned the Bulletproof Conference. If you're interested, we have early bird rates right now, October 23rd through 25th in LA. 500 people came last year. I'm hoping for 1,000 this year.
Sweet. Wow.
All the toys to actually upgrade the human body. We actually get to play with the stuff. It's not like a bunch of boring lectures. We have Daniel Amen coming to present. We have a bunch of people who are basically neuroscientists talking about how do you hack your brain, how do you have more control of your biology. And it's like an adult playground. So I could be more excited. Bulletproofconference.com.
Sweet.
We have some friends that would be interested in that for sure.
Yeah, so, nice.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody, listening and watching at home. VancouverReal.tv is our website. And until next time.
To whatever is.
To whatever is.